Welcome to Practicing the Practices, a learning and experiential podcast geared towards helping you apprentice with Jesus. My name is Brad, and I'll be your co-host. Yes, that's right. I have a co-host on the podcast as of this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to introduce Casey Anderson to the show. Welcome, Casey.
Thanks, Brad. I'm so excited to be here. I feel really special to be a co-host. I don't know if I've ever co-hosted anything before.
Well, get ready because you're going to co-host a lot.
I'm here for it.
Well, thanks so much for joining us on another episode of Practicing the Practices. Before we jump into our topic, I want you to get to know our new co-host, Casey. She joined my staff recently as the pastor for spiritual formation. And since this podcast is all about integrating rhythms and practices into your spiritual life, which would be how we would define spiritual formation, it makes perfect sense for her to join us in this journey. So, Casey, help our listeners get to know you a little bit today. Where did you grow up? What was awesome about it?
I grew up in Palm Desert, California, so with sand and cactuses and all the things, and 120-degree heat in the summer. Yikes. Dry heat. We used to have these things called swamp coolers in my house where you would literally put humidity back in your house through your air conditioner so that it wasn't so dry. So
that sounds terrible.
Well, the sunshine year-round was really awesome, and I really like the small town feel of where I grew up.
That's really cool. Well, you know that Enneagrams and personality types aren't what define a person, but they might tell us a little bit about their personality. So where are you at on the old Enneagram?
It is, if you meet me, it's pretty clear right off the bat. I just met somebody this weekend for the first time, and within like a minute, he was like, "So you're an Enneagram 7?"
It's obvious.
And I was like, "Yes, I am." I love being a 7. It's a fun time. It's a fun, adventurous time being a 7. So we are spontaneous people, adventurous people, fun-loving people, also scattered at times, disorganized, all over the place.
But we need you, and we're glad you're here.
Thanks.
Well, I can't think of anything more important for people to know about the person who is going to shepherd them into a deeper, formative life of Jesus than what that person's favorite food is. A little tongue in cheek. So tell us about your jam. What's your favorite food?
I love food, and you and I have connected over this. I say I'm a foodie.
I say that I'm an eatie.
An eatie, because you don't like fancy food. You just like to eat.
I like fancy food. I like non-fancy food.
I do too, actually. I love a good like special restaurant, and I love, chips, like barbecue chips or something. I love all the things.
So what's your favorite?
I love nachos. If I have to choose, it's hard because I love all food, but I really love nachos.
Well, nachos is a great choice because you can like all sorts of types of nachos.
And I do. I'm a big believer in fake cheese. Like I love the little fake cheese dip that you get at the baseball game.
With the warning sign on the package that says this was made in a factory, chemically enhanced or whatever.
I love a bougie nacho too. I love it all. Just bring me all the nachos and I'm here for it.
Well, that's fun. You have a wonderful family. Tell us a little bit about them.
I have been married to Neil for 22 years, and we met at Biola University. We have a love at first sight story. We really literally saw each other across a crowded space and fell in love the first time we laid eyes on each other. So don't hate us too much for that. But, we are still in love, best friends, work in ministry together. And together we have 3 kids. I say we're more of a spicy family than a sweet family. One of us in our family is really sweet, and it's not me. I think I'm kind of sweet. But
you're not that.
My youngest is kind of the sweeter one. Yeah. The rest of us are spicy. So I have Bennett. He's a 17-year-old junior. Mallory is a 14-year-old freshman. And Amelia is 11, and she's in 6th grade.
Very cool. And I'm sure they have already subscribed and will be listening to Mom's podcast.
They're going to be like, why did you tell him my name, Mom?
Yeah.
Why'd you talk about me?
Oh my gosh, Mom. Anyways. All right. So this is Practicing the Practices because we want to see discipleship, the life of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus manifest in the people of Jesus. And so this is a really important part of who you are. which is why you've come to lead in our church in this way, but also to serve on the podcast. So how did this become such an important part of who you are and what you care about?
Yeah. About 10 years ago, Neil and I, my husband and I, were invited to be a part of a cohort of ministry leaders, church leaders from all different walks of faith and faith traditions. And we journeyed with these people for 3 years, met 3 times a year for retreats. And that experience really opened my eyes to the truth that there are so many ways to connect with Jesus. There are so many people that maybe think differently than I do or have experienced church differently than I have, who love Jesus so dearly. And so that was a really eye-opening experience for me. That's where I first started to be exposed to some spiritual practices. And at first I was like, what is this? This feels a little different. This feels a little weird. But pretty soon I realized what it did for my soul. And I just, like a sponge, started soaking everything up, learning. And it's been in my life ever since.
Wonderful. So happy, listeners, for you to be able to receive and benefit from Casey's experience and passion in this. So, Casey, the first handful of episodes, we focused primarily on the practices of prayer and the role of Scripture in the life of a believer. We've had a couple of interviews on friendship and mission. Today, we are going to briefly introduce the practice that we're going to talk about this month, and that is the practice of hospitality. Now, what comes to your mind when you hear the word hospitality? Maybe the hotel industry or Chick-fil-A. Casey, this is an essential practice of the way of Jesus, but in my experience, we don't hear a lot about it, particularly in that realm. I think that's probably because we misunderstand what hospitality is and its place, its prominence in the Scripture, in the life of Jesus. Mm-hmm. So help us out today. What are some of the common myths out there about what hospitality is?
Yeah. I think in our culture, when we hear the word hospitality, we really associate it a lot with being a perfect hostess. So it's all about the hosting experience and what it reflects about the hostess. So maybe we think that you need to be an amazing cook, like Pioneer Woman, and have these elaborate meals that you make for people. Or maybe we think that your home needs to be beautifully decorated like it belongs on HGTV, or that it needs to be perfectly clean. Your house needs to be so tidy and clean and perfect in that way. Or maybe some people could associate hospitality with something that only extroverts do, or even something that only women do, for that matter.
Which is fascinating from a theological point of view, because one of the most explicit references to hospitality is Paul saying to the elders of the churches, hey guys, one of the expectations of you as an elder is that you practice hospitality. That's so helpful. So give us a better vision for what hospitality is.
Yeah, hospitality in its essence really isn't about any of the things that we just mentioned. We can define hospitality very simply, which is welcoming the stranger. That's our definition that we're using here of hospitality, welcoming the stranger. And it's really interesting, actually. Hospitality and hostility are both derived from the same root word, which is hostis in Latin. And that word means enemy or stranger. So enemy is in the word hospitality. Our response to those we disagree with, those who make us uncomfortable, maybe even people we don't like, is really the measure of whether we're practicing hospitality. And really asking ourselves, do I respond to strangers or even enemies with hostility or with hospitality? I really love this quote by Henry Nouwen. He says, I love quotes, by the way. That's something people need to know about me that wasn't on the initial questioning. I love a good quote.
Me too. Bring it.
So Henry Nouwen says, hospitality means primarily the creation of free space where the stranger can enter and become a friend instead of an enemy. Hospitality is not to change people, but to offer them space where change can take place. It is not to bring men and women over to our side, but to offer freedom not disturbed by dividing lines. And really, this is what the gospel is all about. Hospitality is It's part of the gospel story. God welcomed us when we were a stranger.
Yeah.
So as we practice hospitality, we're really engaging in a symbolic demonstration of the gospel.
Man, that is such a helpful reframe. It's also really beautiful. And so let me close out this brief episode and introduction to you with a personal expression of hospitality. Casey, welcome to the podcast. It's going to be richer, more impactful experience because you're a part of it. So I'm so glad that you're here.
Thanks. Thanks for welcoming me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, in the next few episodes, we're going to drill down deeper on some of these ideas that Casey introduced us today. We're going to talk about how to practice this historic and essential discipleship practice to the way of Jesus. But Casey, as for today, as the official co-host, wrap us up.
Well, listeners, as always, thanks for listening and practicing with us. To make sure you receive future episodes of Practicing the Practices, make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, this is Casey and Brad. Grace and peace.